welcome to BizTech on Ghana Web TV. As usual, I am here to serve you some stories that made headlines in the week and an interview a member of the business desk had with an expert. I am Ernestina Sewa Asante. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back from the break. Now, on Monday, September 27th, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana announced its decision to keep the policy rate at 13.5%. Now, the Bank of Ghana Governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, made this known at a press conference held in Accra. He cited inflation as the major reason the policy rate was kept unchanged. My colleague Mauli Aholumega had an interview with a financial expert to speak on the growing development.
The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank has decided to maintain its policy rate at 13.5%. The Central Bank cited inflation risks remaining in the medium term in the absence of unexpected shocks as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. To unpack this, I'll be speaking with the Chief Executive Officer of Tent Maker Ghana, an entrepreneurship hub. Before I introduce my guest, I'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back from that break. My guest on this week's edition of BizTech is Henry AJ, and he's the Chief Executive Officer of Tent Maker Ghana, which is an entrepreneurship hub, and he's also an economist. Henry, welcome to BizTech on Ghana Web TV. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How's New York?
New York is good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, so welcome to BizTech. I wanted to quickly have a conversation with you on the recent announcement of the policy rate by the central bank, which has been kept at 13.5%. I wanted to first pick your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that the governor gave reasons why this must be kept at 13 points because of the fact that, there are a lot of things that happens in the economy. And for a central bank that has a responsibility to regulate how the financial system is, like, you want to make sure that the rate at which you are lending to banks and then the rate at which you are giving people an opportunity for access for capital is very important. So I think it is good, especially when we are managing a situation that is pretty different from what we know as a normal. Many economies are really stressed. And so most economies have different reactions to this. And I think that it is good that we don't go overboard. And so to keep it at same rate as it were, it's a good move, in my opinion.
Yeah. But some would suggest that our inflation keeps rising up because this is almost the third time that the central bank is pegging this figure 13.5. It did it at 100, its 100 meeting. Did it at the 100 in the first? This is the 102nd. So it's doing it again at this meeting. Should we be concerned that because it's pegging this at the inflation rate?
Well, I mean, the policy rate is a bit different from the inflation rate. And when you look at even our inflation, I can say the margin of inflation is not too much. When you look at various economies, and I've said this, that when you look at, say, the US economy now, as at the beginning of the year, inflation was 1.4%. As of now, inflation is 5.4%.
Yeah,
that's a huge increase.
Yeah,
and it's because of the dynamics of the recovery. There's a lot of cash in the system now. I keep telling people that as of now, the dollar in circulation in the system now has increased by 40% in the last 1 year, right, in the US economy. And so you want to make sure that you are keeping your economy, which is relatively dependent on other economies, close, so you don't go either below or above. So I think that it's a good move also because, the recovery has not been full yet. And you cannot fully give account of how the stress of the economy has been and how things must be in place. So you want to always, if you're advancing, you want to advance cautiously. If you want to retract, you want to track cautiously. And that's why I believe that it's a good move because it gives you an opportunity to observe and to see how things are moving. And also because of the fact that these are done not in wider intervals. it is not too different in most economies to have the same rate.
Yeah. All right. So now I want to come down to lending rates. We all know the lending rate is very key for businesses, but the central bank has decided to keep its policy rate at 13.5. But then here back home in Ghana, banks are lending at 20% and 20% above. Isn't that a bit worrying? And how is that going to affect the private sector?
Well, I mean, my readings of the reports that was sent was that there's a marginal reduction in lending. And it is purely because people are not so sure of lending or borrowing now, and so even the lenders have cash that they cannot give out. And also because if you look at even recovery, the governor mentioned that recovery has been a problem, and that the default rate has increased. That is also because of the pandemic situation that we have and the way we are recovering our economy. Because people take the money and they are not so sure of how to spend it. Supply has become a challenge, demand has become a challenge. Demand side, inflation takes place in different forms. It's either there's so much supply or there's so much demand and things like that. And I think that the reason why you would find a reduction in say interest rates is because a lot of people are not borrowing. But also the reason why you would find that in some snippets, some places, there are some increases because of the way credit is sourced from such angles. In our economy, because of the way the economy is, people go in for facilities when they are really in need of it. And so the processes that they need to go through, they want it to be shortened. And we're not used to that. We are used to the process where it will take you a number of days to be able to get a certain facility that you need. So you need some money so quickly. And that comes back to demand. And because your demand is so urgent, supply will then become the boss, right? So the supply will tell you how to sell it to you. And that's why you find those out of the box, rates that we find on our market. But I think that generally, even the banking system, even the credit system has not recovered because more people are not borrowing. They are so scared. They are not so sure of their business anymore. They're not so sure of the demand for their product anymore. Banks are not so sure of how they recover anymore. The system to recovery is not so certain to them anymore. And so the dynamics is we're still in a phase where everybody's observing something, one thing or the other. And so I would think that it is not too out of place, the circumstances around the rates that we have currently in our situation.
Okay, thank you very much. So speaking of recovery, obviously COVID is here and the markets are quite volatile and it's shattered a lot of things. Our local currency, which is the cedi, has been depreciating, but the Bank of Ghana in its statement, point 27 of the document, says that the cedi has performed strongly with a year-to-date depreciation of 1.8. I would just want to pick your thoughts of that figure, and where do you think our cedi depreciation, in terms of projections, where should we be looking at?
I have had an opinion that our dependence on currency has become a challenge for us as an economy. We look at different, especially developed economies, the value that is stored in transaction is not so dependent on currency. So you'll find that, say, if you move to some places, people don't have cash in their wallets, but they still spend. Okay. And I think that is the place that we need to delve into. I'm sure we'll talk about that when we are looking at the facing off of the ones into coins. But I think that the depreciation is because there's so much pressure on the currency, right? And therefore, because there's so much pressure, you need to make sure that it's always available. Okay. And that is one thing that our economy must move from. Yeah. I am thinking that for us to get to the 9th month, we may not see too much increase in the position of the currency. But also looking forward, looking at the dynamics that COVID brought us, we must all be aiming at something that is central to all of us. We must all be able to put in place some mechanism, some shock resistance, so that when there is something like this again, our currency will not be suffering. Yeah. Right. So I told you that in the US now, there's so much cash in circulation, but we don't think that the currency is depreciated. Why? Because of the system that is in place. Even though there's so much currency, people don't store value in cash. Okay. And when you go to a lot of places in the UK, almost every place where you see the economy doing well. So I asked the question, why do I have to go to, say, Malcolm or go to the mall and have to carry cash with me? Why can't the mall, why can't I go to any place to buy something that will help me not have cash, but have it on some other medium, And I think that will reduce the pressure, and our currency will have much more value than it has now.
Okay. All right. Speaking of value, the Bank of Ghana has also announced that it wants to phase out the 1 cedi and the 2 cedi notes. I first want to understand, do you think this is a good move? And I also want to add to this that the Bank of Ghana's reason for doing that is it's not cost effective to print. But some have argued that this is going to bring a lot of pressure onto the other currencies, because now if you're phasing out the 1 cedi and the 2 cedi notes, which people oftentimes use, we now have to rely on the 5 cedi, and that's going to make transactions quite difficult. I just want to pick your thoughts on that.
Well, for me, there are different dynamics to this. First of all, what you are saying is that we are going to change the way the currency is. We are not going to use notes again. We are going to use coins.
Yes.
Because we believe coins last. Well, as much as I believe it's a good idea, I think it is pretty much short-sighted. So just like I've told you, we need to begin to move the pressure from currency, okay, into a different medium of transaction. So just somewhere last month, a very small country, decided to test its currency system. So El Salvador decided to use cryptocurrency as its currency.
Yeah.
Now, I have my reservation about cryptocurrencies, but I think also that the dynamics is changing. So we need to move from the place where we are dependent on something like that, on physical cash and things like that. I believe that the way our economy is being transitioned now, the fact that we are trying to digitize our system, the fact that Ghana Card is putting some value on, puts my identity on individuals, will help us to streamline some of these things. But we cannot continue to, have a certain sort of value in a certain, medium that give us always, give us a problem, because that thing is in itself losing value. So if I have a cedi and then tomorrow I cannot use that cedi that I'm using today, there's no value for it. But what will make that cedi lose its value is because there's so much pressure on that cedi. Okay, if you want to go get something and then you need to have the value within yourself. Okay, so you need to have the cash within yourself to pay. If the person who is selling to you doesn't see that cash, the person is going to sell to you. But I see that in systems where people don't need to have the value by themselves, but create some trust. Currency is basically a store of trust, a store of value. So we need to reinvent ourselves, from moving the dependence on cash-based economy to some level of economy that doesn't always have to look for cash. But again, to the concern that you raised, not many people want to carry coins on them. All right. Now, because of that, it means that all the time there is so much pressure on the larger denominations that we have. But I don't see it as a problem too much, because it is not the face. No, it is not. In the old times when we say that we are not going to use that currency again, such that because there's no 1 cedi or 2 cedi, if you have a change that is, say, 1 cedi or 2 cedi, you say, let us leave it. And so because of that, pricing would have to factor those small denominations in place, right? So I think it will not be too much of a problem. The only thing is that in the medium term, I think it would help us, so we don't need to reprint currencies like that again. But the question is, if we see that there's so much pressure, as we've heard, on, say, the 200 cedi that we just printed, are we going to print it in coins? I don't think that is going to be the case. So we need to think forward. We need to look at how do we release ourselves from the dependence on some of this currency, and how can we, make our economy rely mostly on systems like credit systems or systems like using our cards for payment, and then having the same all the transaction in a certain pool that all of us can benefit from without necessarily having to carry some of this cash.
Okay. Harry, thank you so much. I'll just take a quick break and we'll be right back.
From the dawn of time, people have engaged in several businesses. With the onset of technology and innovation, life has relatively been made easier. By using debit or credit cards,
mobile banking.
Thank you. And your favorite, mobile money?
tech has indeed married business. On BizTech, we spend time with faces behind known and upcoming businesses in the country.
Learn more about the new technologies and innovation,
as well as find out about the trending issues in the world of business.
Join us as we serve you with a variety of compelling interviews, projects, and others right here on Ghana Web TV.
Okay, Harry, welcome back from our break. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, so we've been speaking about the economy. Obviously, COVID has been here doing quite some number on us. Where do you think, in terms of revitalizing our economy and all of that, from your point of view, what do you think should be the thematic areas that we should be focusing on?
Well, one thing that COVID did for all of us is to put all of us on the same scale. Whether you are developed or you're underdeveloped, you put all of us on the same scale. It also tested our ability to resist some of the things, some things like this, global things like this. In 2008, when there was a financial crisis, we had the aftershock. But COVID, because of the way it was, we all had to experience it. I must say that we, just like the president came and then talked about it, we back in Africa have dealt it much more well than most of the developed economies. I guess maybe because of the nature of COVID. But the ripple effect, the effects on emerging economies like ours has been more dire. Also because of our dependence on foreign direct investments and things like that, and the fact that most of our economies are relying on other developed economies to sustain itself. And so COVID had pressure on household, it had pressure on the economy, it had pressure on businesses, it had pressure on even the way we look at things. But the good thing is that COVID also put all of us on a certain scale that we now know. Now, today, we don't need to have physical experience to be able to understand that things can be done. And so I can live, say, in Ghana and then work, have my work office in, say, Indonesia. I don't need to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. So COVID has taught us that we can all be put on the same scale and that the world is more of a global village than it were when we thought it was. Okay, so it brought its own benefits, but the fact that if you want to depend and rely on somebody, that person is also dealing with their own challenges, and therefore you may have to find a way to deal with yourself. And that's what I think COVID taught of us.
Yeah. So speaking of, you mentioned something very profound about dependence. Speaking of dependence, the finance minister is expected to come before Parliament and present the 2022 budget, the main budget, in November 15th. What do you think should cover this budget?
Okay, so I mean, in terms of even the backlog of COVID and the transitioning into a new dispensation, I think that the sustainability of most economy has been how to digitize our economy. And that's why I said that I'm excited that we are at least using Ghana Card to identify ourselves. We are using the street naming, we are using the house naming and things like that as a way to identify ourselves. I'm not too sure what timelines we have, but I think it is one key aspect of the recovery of our economy and the sustainability of our economy. In recent times, I think that industrialization has become a very interesting, emerging strength for our economy. And the fact that when we move a lot of companies to come and settle in our system, we structure our economy to help in the growth of that. What I am looking up for the finance minister to be able to dwell on is how we are going to complete this whole process of digitizing our economy. Because like I've told you, it will do us a lot of good. It will help us in our credit delivery system. It will help us in our economic recovery system, but it will also help us in our sustainability system. There's one area that I think we started a long time in the first term of this government, was how a lot of people were giving confidence to reinvent themselves, to start something. And so you notice that there was the setup of the Business Development Ministry, and which had the NEIP that helped a lot of people. So we saw a lot of people, graduates, now trying to set up their own enterprises. I think that image was good for all of us. So I've told you that if you are going to look at somebody who is living in some developed economy to come take care of you, it would take a long time. So you need to give more confidence to your people so that they will begin to see within themselves the capacity to produce or to do something else. And so it is one area that I think that the government must spend a lot of money on. How do we reinvent ourselves? How do we give us all the confidence, especially young people? Because our economy is a youngest economy, and therefore we must begin to give the confidence to the people to know that we can do it. And if we can do it, then how do we do it? Is to be able to put in a lot of finance in those areas. So I think that the government must be able to create a certain pool, a pool that build graduates, pool that will build the sustainability of the economy, to be able to create something for itself. So I am looking to the same way the government brought free SHS, all of us were excited, and the fact that we're giving ourselves some understanding of how things happen around us. I'm looking at the government saying that, look, the way to recovery is to industrialize. And the way to industrialize is to keep building the energy of your people to dare to industrialize. And how do they dare to do that? Is to give them some incentive to do that. And therefore, these are some of the things that I'm looking at. But also, there are some things that I feel that the government must really look at. And that is how we distribute our infrastructure. I think that it becomes a challenge for us when the infrastructure decision is skewed. It becomes a challenge because then we build too much pressure on places. For instance, in Accra and in Kumasi and things like that. And I think that if we have to distribute our infrastructure, we have to look at the areas. Previously, when the finance minister is coming to read the budget, one area that we look at is roads. Which road is in the budget, which road is not in the budget, and things like that. Road network is very important, but also how those roads is able to produce something. How those roads. I think, for instance, say the area of road network that we need to look at is the rails. The rails, in the beginning of this government was prominent. But in recent times, I've not really heard too much about it, and something that I think that we need to look at it as one of the areas that will help our growth.
All right. Henry J., thank you so much for your time. This has been very insightful. I've been speaking with Henry J., and he's the Chief Executive Officer of Tent Maker Ghana, and he's also an economist. And we've been unpacking the recent developments by the central bank to maintain the policy rate, amongst other matters, with regards to the economy. This has been this week's edition of BizTech on Ghana Web TV. My name is Mauli Aholumeka.
Thank you, Mauli Aholumeka, for that interesting conversation. We'll be back with Biz Headlines. To our very first story, the Bank of Ghana on Monday, September 27, 2021, announced that the monetary policy rate remains unchanged. The central bank kept the policy rate at 13.5% at their 102nd meeting in Accra. This is the third time the policy rate has been maintained this year.
Inflation has risen sharply over the last two readings, driven mainly by sustained food price increases. Although food inflation has pushed overall inflation close to the upper limit of the band, core inflation remains relatively subdued. In the view of the committee, the increase in inflation is mainly due to food inflation, which is expected to abate with the onset of the harvest season. This notwithstanding, the latest forecasts indicate that inflation will remain within the medium target band, but closer to the upper limit in the near term, in the absence of further unexpected shocks. A close monitoring of the inflation situation is, however, warranted to respond swiftly to prevent potential second-round effects on headline inflation from the rising food inflation. The committee stands ready to respond appropriately as needed if this particular risk materializes. Given these considerations and the fairly balanced risks to inflation and growth in the outlook, the committee decided to keep the policy rate unchanged at 13.5%.
The Bank of Ghana Governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, announced that very soon the 1 cedi and 2 cedi notes will not be in the system. He said printing the aforementioned notes are not cost-effective and most times receive them soiled and torn. Also, the currency processing machines are unable to process these weak notes. Dr. Ernest Addison therefore noted that the 1 cedi and 2 cedi notes will be replaced by their respective coins.
The 2 cedi notes and the one with the President Nkrumah's picture on, I know that there has been some discussion on that. You would recall that this was a note that was issued as a commemorative note. So commemorative notes are not notes that you continue to print, right? And therefore, what we have done in the last 2 years is to introduce the 2 cedi Ghana coin, right? And the 2 cedi Ghana coins, I believe, are circulating, and you would expect that eventually they would more or less play the role that the 2 cedi notes are playing. Both the 1 Ghana cedi note and the 2 Ghana cedi note would eventually be phased out because they are not cost effective in terms of the printing costs of notes that circulate very widely and they come back very torn and soiled and very difficult for currency processing machines to process them. You have bales and bales of 1 cedi notes which we are not even able to process. So the view in the longer term is to more or less, get out of the notes of 1 cedi and 2 cedi and then use the 1 Ghana cedi coin and the 2 Ghana cedi coin.
Management of the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Limited, BOST, has stated it has saved the country from paying $26 million to 8 bulk distribution companies. This comes following huge deposits of petroleum products which allegedly went missing from tanks of the National Strategic Oil Storage Company.
We did a forensic audit in-house. We brought in Yoko. We brought in the national security. We used our own people with the same stakeholders. And guess what? Each of these companies who claimed they were owed $37 million now accepted that we owe them $11 million. We saved this country a whopping $26 million. And this was done by the same staff who we came to meet in BOST, together with support from some security agencies. Now, this is a very huge feat, because if this money had been paid without questioning the amount, we would have paid $26 million for free out. So we are extremely proud about this particular event.
The Bank of Ghana has disclosed that it spent 337.5 million cedis towards the printing of currency notes in 2020 to 306.2 million cedis spent in 2019. A recent 2020 annual report has shown. The report said the central bank has also spent 7.9 million cedis in 2020 on other currency management operations compared to the 3.9 million cedis spent in 2019. These figures, the BOG said, place the expense in the total currency issue recorded in 2020 at 347.8 million cedis. On currency notes that were in circulation for the period, the central bank recorded 23.3 billion cedis as compared to 16.2 billion cedis earlier recorded in 2019. The report stated that on deposits in various currency fronts, the central bank recorded 17.5 billion cedis of cedi-denominated notes, 4.5 billion cedis in dollars, 320 million cedis in pounds, and 693.1 million in euros, while other currencies recorded were estimated 13.9 million cedis. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is expected to deliver the 2022 budget statement before Parliament on November 15, 2021. The presentation of the budget is in accordance with Article 179 of the 1992 Constitution and Section 21 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 291. According to a statement issued by the ministry, it is prior to the presentation seeking inputs from various business associations, professional bodies, faith-based organizations, as well as the general public. The inputs the ministry added will cover the budget presentation from 2022 to 2025 and should reach its offices not later than October 8, 2021. That's all for today. Keep watching BizTech on Ghana Web TV. Before we go, do log on to www.ghanaweb.com for more stories. Do well to follow us on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Ghana Web, on YouTube, Ghana Web TV. I am Ernestina Sewa Asante. Do have a lovely weekend.